Well, I mean, umbrellas have been in existence for probably about 30 years now, isn't it? Sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And I'd say that there's very limited supply in the market of insurance providers. You can probably count them on one hand. So I think the fact that we've come to market almost gives umbrella owners another choice.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Sam Cox.
I'm Nicole Slowey.
And today we're joined by our very own Dominic Johns.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Good to have you here. And we're here to chat about the launch of our new brand, aren't we? UmbrellaSure.
Very exciting times ahead.
Definitely. So I think the remit for this chat is to talk about what we're doing with UmbrellaSure, but I think it probably makes a bit of sense to start with where we've been as a business and what sort of brought us to this point. So we're probably doing this a bit wrong way round, seeing as I've got the longest tenure of all of us. But Nick, would you like to
sure.
talk a little bit about the background on Qdos and what's brought us to where we are today?
Yeah, definitely. So from our perspective, as most people know, we have been sort of the known brand in the contractor market space for IR35, really since the implementation of IR35 reform back in the early 2000s. We have equally sort of built up our business and our brand in the self-employed and contractor insurance space as well. And we've evolved into the commercial space as far as when IR35 reform happened in the public sector and in the private sector. We evolved our business to be able to support those organisations with their new responsibilities and their new aspects of the legislation that they ultimately had to manage from their perspective. And that very much all came from the point of view of that we are there to support the contingent labour market as a whole, continue to support the individual workers and the other businesses in the supply chain, and do that through compliance and risk management services, products and insurance and whatnot. And really over that time, that sort of opened us up into that world of kind of more traditional commercial insurance in terms of us working with recruitment agencies and on umbrella companies in an insurance capacity, which has been something we've been sort of kind of quietly working on in the background for a few years now. And that's really got us to a point where we want to put some specific attention and brand recognition behind it. And there is UmbrellaSure as a concept was born.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things where we've always sort of worked to that model of, Qdos being an advisory business at our roots. Obviously in the contractor space and around the reforms, IR35 was the lead there. But what's been nice about that experience is the exposure it's given us to other areas of that recruitment space. And a crucial sort of step in the Qdos journey was when we were acquired by our parent company, Tokyo Marine, an insurance business first and foremost. And they gave us access to that product set back in 2018 now that allowed us to serve that wider market, which was very nice sort of time that we brought you into the business, wasn't it, Dom?
It was. I joined at the beginning of 2019 from memory.
Yeah, so
6 years now.
Just before the proverbial hit the fan in terms of the IR35 reforms, and we all had a lot of fun around that time.
It was a bit of a whirlwind, that wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of those times in your early years at Qdos, we were focused on that IR35 piece, but it's always been part of that plan to really attack the commercial insurances behind that as well. And I think agencies were the first step in that. In that there's a bit more crossover between the PSC market that we operated in, or continue to operate in, and the agency space compared to the umbrella side of things. And I think obviously naturally we've become very exposed to umbrellas through the last 7 or 8 years. Sort of developed an expertise naturally in supporting those types of businesses. But I think it's probably fair to say that there does need to be a line drawn between the requirements of an agency and the requirements of an umbrella company from an insurance perspective. And I think that's really what the rationale behind the launch of the UmbrellaSure brand is, isn't it? It's about making sure that we're giving that section of the market the sort of signposting that it needs to really understand the specialism that we've got there. So, Dom, I mean, in terms of being out in the market and speaking to umbrella companies, how have you found the shape of things at the moment?
Very, very positive. It's a specialist sector, isn't it? I think umbrella businesses want to work with a broker that have, sort of experience, reputation, in the sector, and a deep understanding of working with contingent workers. And obviously, we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also where our parent company come into it a lot, isn't it? The security that comes from being owned by an insurer, and an insurer with the excellent rating that Tokyo Marine have. It makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, and it does. And I think from our perspective as well, we are really uniquely placed in the market in the sense of where our corporate ownership is, the journey that our organisation has been on, and our intention to still be that supporter and custodian of the contingent labour market, and the fact that has now broadened to kind of encompass that full supply chain piece.
Yeah.
And ultimately, from us, we're very heavily focused on the PSC contractor market. And supporting umbrellas in the way that we can through the insurance products and services that we're talking about today is another way for us to support the broader use of umbrella companies. And we saw a big increase in that, both through public sector and private sector IR35 reform. So that's a way for us to support a market, because ultimately in the UK, we need to have a healthy, flexible economy.
Yeah.
And that involves different ways in which individual workers are engaged, whether it's PAYE models, limited company contractors, umbrella models and whatnot. It's key for us to continue to support that in as much a strong way as we can, and this is an avenue for us to be able to do that.
I mean, in terms of the market as we found it from the outward-facing perspective, what do we think the perception of umbrella companies was of the ability of the insurance market to serve their needs?
Well, I mean, umbrellas have been in existence for probably about 30 years now, isn't it? So late 90s, early 2000s. And I'd say that there's very limited supply in the market of insurance providers. You can probably count them on one hand. So I think the fact that we've come to market almost gives umbrella owners another choice.
Yeah, no, I think that's really does hit the nail on the head, doesn't it? In terms of it is a bit of a closed market. There's been the same operators there for really the last couple of decades, and I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that what we're doing is particularly disruptive, but certainly that extra option and that ability to drive a little bit of competition, I think, is a healthy thing for the market, isn't it?
It's certainly been well received so far.
Yeah, and I think the other side of it that which struck me when we first started, I can remember all those years ago, you and I having the conversations around how difficult it was sometimes for umbrella companies to arrange that type of insurance, is a lack of understanding in the wider insurance space about the nuances of an umbrella company.
Yeah, it's very much a specialised sector. You want to work with a broker who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you could quite easily end up with inadequate protection in place, and
inadequate protection or overpaying massively, as we've seen in some cases as well.
Exactly. So work with a broker who has a deep understanding of the market, somebody who can cut through the complexities, and somebody who can really hold your hand as a partner and help protect yourself against the risks that you face.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the grounding that we have in looking at contractual terms and understanding risk on paper has a big impact on that as well. It was a real sort of eye opener for us to see how little attention sometimes is paid in the underwriting of these type of insurance policies as to the contractual risk that umbrella companies take. Yeah, I think that's sort of a key differentiator in terms of how other people approach things.
Yeah, I think the umbrella market is a fast-changing market. Nothing ever stays the same. So it's really important that you keep your house in order when it comes to insurance, because you could be onboarding new types of contractors, you could be accepting new types of contract terms that change your contractual liability profile. There's plenty of things to keep an eye on, and what a risk assessment does, it just makes sure that you're keeping an eye on things, your house is in good order. And that you've got the right protection with no gaps. So if a policy is ever called upon, it will respond in the right way.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth drilling down into that in a little bit more detail as well, in that we have obviously a suite of insurances that we offer to an umbrella company, and it's probably fair to say a few of those are completely served by basic off-the-shelf type covers. But really where the differences do come in is around the liability covers and the professional indemnity covers, where ultimately these businesses can be responsible for the actions of the workers they're placing, which is a subtlety that I think unless you specialise in the recruitment space like us and a limited number of others, you could really end up coming up short.
Yeah, it's a very specialised sector. It's not like insuring a widget. You've got to know what you're doing.
Absolutely. So, in terms of our position in the market and our learning journey that we went on back in 2017 and into the off-payroll reforms in 2021, what do we think we learned about umbrella companies and recruiters to a certain extent in general that sort of sets us up to feel emboldened taking on the market with a specific brand?
That's a good question, and people might agree with what I'm about to say. But I think ultimately we were in a space where we worked really closely with a lot of key umbrella company partners, key recruitment company partners, and really got to understand at a practical and detailed level how these organisations work, both in the context of placing the workers and how that looks contractually, how that then comes back to from a compliance and supply chain perspective for both the recruitment agencies themselves, the payroll companies, and the interaction then with clients, because I think the hirer part in this is quite unique, because a lot of hiring organisations had never really heard of or knew of what an umbrella company actually largely was before
that was
2017
a big shift, wasn't it?
and kind of 2021, because there was such a big focus on PSCs, especially in kind of white collar type sectors and whatnot. But I think ultimately for us, what we got to learn is there are a lot of really compliant, really positive operators in that market who, like us, want to champion for the continued use of contingent workers, and that there are sometimes needs where workers do need to be operating on an on-payroll basis. And that there are mechanisms and structures and ways in which to do that. And from our point of view, ultimately there are compliant ways in which these organisations can do their business, make sure that the individual workers are being taxed appropriately and whatnot. And I think that's one of the key things for us, as whilst there is a kind of broader view publicly perhaps that the umbrella market is full of kind of bad actors and there's lots of non-compliant parties, of which there are some, but there are some really, really good businesses in there, both in the umbrella company space and the recruitment agency space, who are using these in an umbrella engagement model in the right way. And like I say, I think our ability to work really closely with those businesses, understand their inner workings, understand the practical use of umbrellas in the supply chain, how workers come into it as well, gives us probably as most of a detailed view that any insurance provider and or broker would ever have, because no one's been in the businesses in the same way that we have as a result of the forms. And like I said, we had a lot of really big strategic partnerships through IR35 reform, both in the umbrella space and the recruitment agency space, naturally, that gave us that opportunity to have that level of insight into how ultimately the inner workings of that industry as a whole.
And that's on top of the grounding that we had from the actual worker perspective as well, which I think makes a lot of difference. And, historically that has very much been a Qdos focus. But, I mean, to your point, Nick, around compliance, this is obviously a very interesting time for umbrella companies. But I think that that's a crucial point in when we were having those conversations with recruiters, first and foremost, and the agencies in 2021 and in the lead up to the reforms, is that there were a lot of PSC specialist agencies that historically hadn't dealt with umbrella firms, and because the change to the off payroll rules meant that there was a lot of people exiting the PSC structures and into umbrellas, did mean that there was a degree of uncertainty, and I don't know whether that has perhaps manifested over the last few years, and the increased usage of umbrellas since the off payroll reforms has driven this focus on compliance that we're currently in for the umbrella side of things, but ultimately that is where we are. We're recording this podcast mid-February 2025, and it's looking like it's going to be a testing year for umbrella companies coming
Lots of regulatory changes on the horizon. We've got the new reforms coming in April next year.
That's right, yeah. And as we sit here today recording, we're expecting a further update from HMRC as to the nature of those reforms and clarifying some bits that really do still have some massive question marks hanging over them as to how it's going to be implemented. But I think what's clear is at the heart of that legislation is a requirement for the industry to satisfy itself that all parts of that supply chain are compliant, which making sure that the parties are on a similar footing, making sure that everybody has adequate insurances throughout is an important part of it. But what do you think it says about us as a business that, despite those challenges, we're launching this UmbrellaSure brand?
Well, I think not many insurers have done what we're doing. It's a sign of real commitment, I think, to the industry. A lot of effort's gone into it. A lot of investment's gone into it. So I think it signifies our broad ambitions in the market. I think it signifies our intent to disrupt the status quo a little bit. And I hope the industry will identify with the new brands, rally around it and support it as we roll this out.
Yeah, and I think, again, at the heart of what we're doing here, it is a little bit of a statement of solidarity with the industry. They do serve a really important function in the contingent labour market. We're always the champions of compliance, and working with businesses that are keen to promote that is something that we'll continue to do. And I think it's going to be really interesting going into the back end of 2025, and as soon as further clarification has been provided by HMRC on how the reforms will be implemented, about us gearing up to support Umbrella specifically on that front, in addition to the commercial insurances that we're looking at.
Yeah, that's an exciting, possibly an exciting opportunity, depending on how it all goes.
And I think it positively positions us to continue to support the umbrella market as it evolves and changes, because irrespective of the specifics of what comes out of the legislation in terms of the specific shape of reform, we will be well positioned to be able to support umbrella companies in a number of different ways, and we are our position as that compliance partner, as an insurer and being owned by a large global insurer, gives us a huge amount of ability to design and adapt as the legislative market changed, which we've demonstrated over the history of the business, as far as everything that we've done across reforms in both IR35, agency legislation and whatnot. So we're very, very well positioned and seasoned in actually facing into legislative change to make sure that we can continue to support the parties that are affected, where it centres around that tax piece as well.
I think it's something that we as a business, but also me personally as well, it's something that, 20 years at Qdos is really the defining characteristic of what's
20 years
made.
now?
Getting on there, yeah.
Veteran.
Technically, I have over-egged my tenure slightly. It's actually 19 years in a couple of weeks. Tom, stop it. Flirting with me. The wet behind the ears. Technically still not graduated from university because I left early because I ran out of money and joined Qdos approach. Sort of gave me a good start, but not quite 20 years yet. But this time next year we'll be planning a massive party.
That's a good innings, that is, Sam. 20 years.
Yeah, I'll take it. Nothing to do with the fact that I live 10 minutes down the road and don't like a long commute, so it's absolutely fine. But in that time, I think the defining characteristic, both of my career actually, but Qdos more generally, is an ability to take legislative change, understand the parties that are affected by that change, and design insurance products that sit around it. So we don't know what's over the horizon from an umbrella perspective, and those reforms that we're expecting to be clarified. But the amount of uncertainty there really does double down the value of taking qualified advice on that and working with a business that is very, very clear on their remit to support businesses through that type of change.
Yeah. So thinking about UmbrellaSure and the era that we're about to enter, it's been a project that we've been working on for quite some time now. An appropriate shout out to the marketing team is definitely due at this point for all the hard work that they've done. But the amount of involvement that both of you have kind of had in that project, what is it you're most excited about and most looking forward to as part of us making that kind of statement with bringing UmbrellaSure to the market?
I think we've got something new and shiny to share with the market. That's quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about the natural progression for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a bit of a cynic at heart, and just putting a new label on something is always a little bit. I don't know what the correct word would be, actually. It feels a little bit disingenuous, maybe. But really, what the purpose of what we're doing here is to focus on that expansion that we've already taken into that space, and just putting that next foot forward on that journey and really making a statement of intent.
I think it really articulates our strategic focus, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a great way of putting
Definitely.
it. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting 2025 as we roll on with the launch of the brand. We've already got a number of umbrella companies who already insure with us. So if they are already sat here watching this, going, "Hold on, I thought these guys already did what they're talking about," they are correct, and we'll be in touch just with a little bit of a messaging around the UmbrellaSure branding. But really looking forward to expanding conversations that we've been having over the last couple of years, and getting stuck into the market. So I mean, getting in touch with you is a fairly straightforward thing, isn't it, Dom? You're everywhere all at once, aren't you?
I like to throw myself around, and hopefully my expenses account will go through the roof.
Absolutely. I look forward to signing off like this, like I normally have to do. But it's a nice industry to work in. It's a very personable industry, isn't it? It's the type of space where if you do have a bit of personality and a bit of guile to you, there's a lot of kindred spirits in that space, isn't there?
I love working in industry. I've got lots of close contacts in it, and I'm keen to see them succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. As are we. I mean, Nick, from a worker perspective, obviously, it feels as though we're maybe not focusing as much on those workers at that point from an umbrella perspective. But do we think that actually off the back of the reforms there may be a swing back towards more usage of PSC contractors maybe?
Potentially. I think that it's definitely something that we've been thinking about when we've been sort of trying to play through those different scenarios as far as where reforms may land in terms of who's going to have responsibility and liability for what and the specific mechanism. But I think any sort of change, much like we saw with IR35 reform, where different parties in the supply chain are becoming responsible for new risks that they maybe otherwise didn't have risk of specifically before, that definitely prompts people to look more broadly and take a step back and do a bit of a check of, okay, well, actually, is this the best possible route for us? We know that a lot of organisational use of umbrella companies came as a bit of a knee-jerk risk-averse reaction to IR35 reforms, where many hiring organisations just blanket imposed policy decisions where PSCs were no longer allowed to work within the businesses. So I think in those supply chains where there's recruitment agencies who are perhaps rethinking their position when they think about the implications for them, that it may prompt some organisations to do a wider contingent worker review and look at where the avenues are most appropriate for both in the context of how are we actually using workers and what kind of workers are we using in the business and what is our resourcing worker strategy, and then how do we best manage our risks appropriately from a compliance and a financial risk perspective, because both of those things need to kind of go hand in hand. And whilst I perhaps maybe don't foresee as landslide a change as what we did with reforms, I do think that there will be some kind of try to think of some sort of sea analogy there, but it's not coming to me. But some sort of kind of not a tidal wave, more of a kind of like a gentle,
a big
wave, more like a kind of a gentle wave into some contractors or some organisations kind of changing their position, where we might see a bit of a pushback in some situations to a PSC model. And I think for us in the position that we're in with the support and advice that we give, it always comes back to, you need to be making the change for the right reasons. You need to be thinking with compliance in mind. Organisations can absolutely make commercial decisions, but you need to be thinking with that compliance lens on to make sure that you are adhering to the regulations and legislations that apply to you. And also think about it as far as, like I said at the top of the session, there is a place for both off-payroll and on-payroll workers in the UK economy and within businesses. And for me, when I'm engaging with organisations, it's all about think about what it is that you need. What are workers actually doing? What resources do you need? What services do you need?
Yeah.
And start from there. And I think that we will probably see some churn of contractors maybe perhaps moving from umbrella back into that wider PSC model.
I tend to agree.
I think that may, in some cases, actually provide opportunities for umbrella and payroll companies, in that a lot of them do also operate accounting practices that specialise in
hybrid models, don't they?
Yeah. Exactly. So where there is a group structure in place, and there's accounting functions, or just onward dealing with PSC contractors, I think it's important for us to show support and flag our services in that space as well. So under the traditional Qdos banner, we obviously have a very, very powerful name amongst PSC contractors, and have very successfully worked with accounting businesses to implement preferential schemes around commercial insurances for those workers. What we also do is offer a suite of IR35 support that may also be useful in those spaces as well. So I think whilst the UmbrellaSure brand is something that is very much focused on the umbrella sector and the commercial insurances that sit within that, I think it's important to flag as well that we want to work with those businesses on a holistic basis.
Yeah.
There's a raft of services that we can provide into a business that interacts with the contingent labour market in as varied a way as the payroll sector does.
Yeah.
I think it's also another note that we can make is around sole traders. So we very much, again, our grounding is in personal service companies, IR35 contractors. But a lot of umbrella companies will also payroll self-employed on a traditional basis, and we've done some fairly interesting work on that side of things around a tax liability policy to cover tax status on that side as well. I mean, how often is it, Dom, that you come up against an umbrella company, or come up and speak to an umbrella company that has concerns around status of self-employed sole traders, often in the construction industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's an increasingly common thing in the umbrella industry, definitely.
Yeah, and I think obviously the legislative reforms in that space came in the mid-2010s. It's the agency regulations referred to as Section 44. Not dissimilar to a lot of the off-payroll reforms. It was about ensuring that workers who were engaged on a self-employed basis were done in a legitimate way. But ultimately, where there is that potential tax liability of worker reclassification, Qdos, by and large, can insure against it. So on that basis, again, if there are concerns around tax status issues, we're uniquely positioned to be able to serve those clients' requirements and put in place some pretty unique covers.
And I do think that, and we've certainly seen a few different scenarios of it working in the end hire space, is that as organisational kind of the world of work changes, organisations are becoming more astute as to how they resource their business, and whether that's using permanent employees, non-permanent employees, sole traders, freelancers, contractors, PSCs. There's obviously 101 labels that you can give to identify individual pockets of these types of workers, but lots of organisations in the hiring space are using that sole trader kind of pool, whether it's those in kind of the creative sectors, as an example, or some blue-collar trades where we see it as well, and bringing agencies into the mix, then that represents another layer of complexity. But to your point, Sam, we can provide support, both in the avenues of worker classification, but also in respect of that tax liability piece as well. And it's big. I think that as the world of work evolves, as tax legislation evolves, these things you hope all start to align and become one thing, and that people can think about it as this holistic piece. Whereas at the minute, organisations, whether you are an umbrella company, or payroll provider, you're a recruitment agency, you're a hiring organisation, you're the individual worker or a PSC, there's just so many different pieces of legislation and risks that are associated to it, just in the context of tax.
It's great to see how our toolkit has evolved over the years, really, to support the whole recruitment supply chain, contractors, agencies, umbrellas, IR35. It's never ending.
It is. And it's
whatever's thrown at us, we can adapt, we can survive. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what to expect from UmbrellaSure, we've got some more comms coming out over the upcoming weeks. There'll be some more video content. We'll be doing a bit of a one-to-one session with Dom. For the very few people in the market who don't know who Dom is, we'll be doing a bit of a deep dive into his murky background. And,
that's going to be very colourful.
Who knows whether that will reach air or not. And for those of you with a slightly drier taste in podcasts, we'll also be doing a little bit of a deep dive into some of the more technical product-focused pieces that we'll be providing as part of the UmbrellaSure brand. And I think whilst, as I say, it's not necessarily content that will, raise a lot of laughs, it's actually quite useful for businesses to be able to understand in a little bit more detail what a
100%.
broker it will be asking them in order to arrange those types of covers, and a little bit of the rationale behind it, a bit of a peek behind the curtain on the underwriting side of things, which if that's not a trailer for you, I don't know what is.
I think with insurance, devil's always in the detail, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So trying to shed some light on that detail is only a good thing. So
Definitely.
So no, for now, thank you both for joining us on our launch
Thank you,
podcast,
Sam.
and
Exciting.
we will see you again soon for more UmbrellaSure chat. Thank you very much. Bye.